Hello everyone. I want to give a little comment update on the ongoing events, in particular in Israel, but not exclusively. There is still much debate among Christians and students of Bible prophecy whether this is Ezekiel 38 or Psalm 83. And I spoke in the previous Trumpet alerts about this and my thoughts on this. And without going into it again, I just want to see what's important is to look at the motive and at the players. They are both mentioned, both in Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38. And we see that the motive, Psalm 83, is to destroy, to eradicate Israel. The motive in Ezekiel 38 is to get spoil from Israel, the riches from Israel. So that's a different motive. The players also are different. In Psalm 83 it are people groups mainly, not nations, but people groups mainly that surround Israel directly or even reside inside Israel. Ezekiel 38, it are nations at the helm, Russia, Turkey and Iran, but also other nations I mentioned, get to that in a second. So if we take this apart, we can see that this makes it actually clear. And as I said, also Psalm 83 has begun actually the day or the day after Israel was formed in 1948, but it has not been finished because these groups are still there, and that makes actually clear that this war has not ended. Now some say yes, but Israel is at least officially at peace with Lebanon, with Jordan, with Egypt, and therefore this cannot be Psalm 83. Well, Psalm 83 does not say that Israel is at war with either of these countries, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt. These nations are not even mentioned there. And I showed this also in the previous Trumpet alert. I showed you the groups that are mentioned in Psalm 83 and how they relate to modern names. But these are groups that emanate from within these countries, but they do not represent these countries necessarily. So, for example, Hezbollah operates from without Lebanon, but it's not Lebanon itself. It's not the Lebanese government that is waging war against Israel. There's only one nation mentioned in Psalm 83, and that is Syria or Assur, depending on the translation you use. Syria is the only one mentioned, and I think that is important with regards to another prophecy, that of Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus. And after the attack of Hamas on October 7, I think 1 or 2 days later, Israel already announced that if Hezbollah would mingle itself in the battle, Damascus would be destroyed. And if you heard it or read it in the news, this must have raised some eyebrows, because at first glance it doesn't make any sense. If Hezbollah gets into the battle that operates from Lebanon, then Damascus will be destroyed, which is in Syria. So how does this go? It's strange, but from a prophetic point, it's exactly what we actually expect to happen. Now, having said all that, the Ezekiel 38 war, the Gog-Magog war as it's often called, is clearly shaping on the horizon. On the horizon, I say, before we get to that point, there is other things, obviously. But we see it shaping, so things are going fast. We will get there in a not too distant future. What we saw last week is that Algeria voted to be against Israel and for the Palestinians, and basically de facto declared war. Now, this is prophetically extremely important. It's not mentioned a lot online, but I showed you the other time also the nations that are mentioned in Ezekiel 38, 39, and how they translate to modern names. And I will put the table on screen again. And what you see is that Algeria is mentioned there. This is in the Bible often mentioned as Cush or Put. So that they now clearly choose sides is important. This is not important for the Psalm 83 fulfillment, but for the Ezekiel 38 fulfillment that is on the horizon. What we also see is all throughout the world, mainly pro-Palestinian protests, also some pro-Israel protests, but mainly actually pro-Palestinian. And we see that the hatred against Israel and against Jews is increasing everywhere, resulting sometimes in people being hurt or killed. And I suspect that this is going to increase in the coming days. There is also a lot of division among Christians, which is a shame, but it seems to be that anything that happens in the world, and especially when as much as it pertains to prophecy, causes division among Christians. Anyway, we see that, but that's also an important thing. I'll get to that in a second. But I titled this trumpet alert, are we gearing up for World War III? Now, why would I bring World War III in the mix? Well, we see, of course, still the war in Ukraine going on. And there are things boiling in many other places in the world. To name one, of course, China is still waiting to annex Taiwan. This is going to happen some point. And there is lots of tension in the South China Sea between China and other nations, Canada, US, and others. Last week, Russia withdrew from the nuclear test treaty. This means they can now do nuclear explosions, whether it's for test or for actually live fire. But they withdrew from this treaty. It's an important step, and I mentioned also before that they have already put their Sarmat ICBM on combat readiness a couple of weeks ago, and just a day after they withdrew from the treaty, or 2 days after, they did another test with ICBM capable of carrying 6 nuclear warheads. And this was launched from a submarine, so they are testing their different capabilities for launching nuclear weapons from the air, from land, and from sea. We see also that at the same time the US has now announced a new nuclear bomb, next generation, so to speak. So these drums are beating not only of war, but nuclear war. And it's very possible that we are gearing up for the greatest conflict that we have seen in human history. It's important, and it has biblical connections, and I just want to show what's happening as I see it. It's in line with what I said before, but just to bring it together. So what we see, in my opinion, is Psalm 83. So that's happening in Israel. What is very likely to happen is at some point Hezbollah will come into the mix, and Israel will do what it said it would do, either by itself and or with assistance of the United States. Damascus will be destroyed, and this will be the fulfillment of Isaiah 70. So this is also on the horizon. And another prophecy I mentioned the other time is that of Isaiah 49, the attack on Elam, the nuclear facilities in Iran. So that's Isaiah 49. So we see all this, and all this can be eventually part of what we would call world war, because when these things erupt, other nations that are now waiting will take the chance, like as I mentioned, China on Taiwan, but there are other things brewing as well elsewhere in the world, and these nations know that if the US in particular and NATO are distracted with these things, then they are more likely to be successful in what they want to do. So all of this can be part of World War. All this can be part of World War III. I hope not, but it's very likely. I said already February last year, when the conflict in Ukraine began, that it had the propensity to erupt into a world war. And with everything that's added now to it, this has only become stronger. This means that at some point this will be so devastating that it calls for peace. This will be the next thing. It will call for peace, and that is the fulfillment of Daniel 9:27. And then Israel will live in peace. We focus on Israel prophetically, that's what we look at. Although many things will happen all throughout the world. Isaiah 49 will cause a massive amount of refugees to go all over the nations, and many things will happen, but prophetically, the magnification glass, the focus is on Israel. Israel will live at peace. That is one of the conditions of Ezekiel 38. Israel lives in peace without walls and fences. That is certainly not the case now. There's another indication why this is not yet Ezekiel 38. Once there's peace, the stage is set for Ezekiel 38. These nations that are now in play will be, not the nations, the groups, the Islamic groups, they will be eradicated or become insignificant. And now the stage is set for Ezekiel 38. Now, it's my belief that before this takes place, before the Ezekiel war takes place, we are out of here. I think Ezekiel war will take place in the beginning, or at the beginning, in the beginning of the tribulation period, and that is mainly because if you read in Ezekiel 38, 39 how it ends, you see stark similarities with what the book of Revelation describes. So I believe these events will happen in the tribulation period, which means the tribulation period begins, as Daniel 9:27 also says, when the peace treaty is signed or confirmed. So there we are in the tribulation period. That means that the rapture, which we believe is pre-trib, will happen here. that's the fish, the church going up. So this means that we are very close, because we see all these things, or many of the things that are necessary for Ezekiel 38. We see them taking shape right now. Now, I want to come back to this little booklet I wrote in 2014. Yeah. Forget Everything, which can be downloaded from the website for free as ebook in different languages, English, Dutch, Greek and Korean. But I wrote there about the coming beast system, that which is described in the book of Revelation, and that it consists of three pillars: governmental, financial or economical, and religious. That means that there's a massive change in the whole geopolitical, economical, and religious paradigm in the world. Now, everything for that is already in place. The only thing is, how will it be implemented? How will the world change from what we have now into that? And what I suggest in this book is that a world war could be the trigger for all of this. And I didn't just make this up. There is a letter that Albert Pike wrote, allegedly in 1871, although there is some discussion about this. But one thing is for sure, it's already mentioned and quoted before the Second World War. So we know at least it's that old. Because there is some debate whether it's original or not. But we know it's that old, and so that makes it actually interesting for everything that happened since the Second World War, and including the Second World War. Now, I will read a part of this that I also quoted in this book, and have in mind what is happening today, the increasing hatred against Jews and against Israel, and the many pro-Palestinian protests that are going on all throughout the world. Have this in mind when you read this, or when you hear this. I will read it. So it says, quote, "The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then, everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time." So we see here how this has been planned ahead, and actually in this letter, the three world wars are mentioned: World War I, II, and III, each as a next step in the phase to in the plan to get to the beast system, basically. And you see that here in this third and final world war, all the existing The systems will collapse, religiously, economically, politically, and the B system can and will be set up. Peace will follow, and then the tribulation will begin. We know, of course, it's short-lived, but we know how it will play out. So, if all this is indeed happening now, and it seems so with everything we see, we are so close. We are so close to the fulfillment of all of this, and thus to the rapture of the church. So once again, I end by saying, keep looking up. Our redemption draws near. Thanks for watching.